The most dangerous lie is the one told by someone who believes no one will ever question it. The courtroom carried the quiet weight that only truth, or deception, could create. Morning light filtered through tall windows, stretching across polished wooden floors and rows of occupied benches. Attorneys organized thick binders. Reporters whispered to one another while checking their notes. Jurors sat patiently, unaware that the testimony they were about to hear would eventually mean far more than anyone in the room expected. Officer Daniel Brooks adjusted the collar of his dark blue uniform before stepping into the witness stand. His polished badge reflected the light. His posture reflected confidence. He had testified dozens of times before. He knew exactly how to sound believable. Across the courtroom sat Monica Hayes. The black woman wore a charcoal gray business suit, her dark leather portfolio resting neatly on the table before her. She had not interrupted anyone since the hearing began. She had barely spoken more than a few words to her attorney. Instead, she listened. She watched. She wrote short notes in careful handwriting. Nothing about her suggested fear. Nothing suggested urgency. If anything, her silence seemed strangely deliberate. Daniel noticed it. He mistook it for resignation. The prosecutor approached the witness stand. "Officer Brooks, would you please describe your interaction with Ms. Hayes on the afternoon in question?" Daniel nodded without hesitation. Ms. Hayes repeatedly interfered with a lawful police investigation. His voice carried smoothly through the courtroom. She refused to cooperate despite multiple lawful requests. Several jurors wrote notes. The prosecutor continued. "Did her actions affect your ability to perform your duties?" "Yes." "How?" "They delayed the investigation and created unnecessary confusion at the scene." His answers came quickly. Confidently. Almost effortlessly. Imagine standing inside a courtroom where every sentence spoken under oath has the power to shape another person's future. Imagine knowing that the loudest voice in the room isn't always the closest to the truth. Monica looked up briefly. Her expression never changed. She simply returned to her notes. Daniel interpreted her calm as defeat. He had encountered nervous witnesses. Angry witnesses. Emotional witnesses. But this woman seemed almost patient. The prosecutor smiled. No further questions at this time. The judge nodded before making a note on the file in front of him. Court resumed its quiet rhythm. Pens moved. Pages turned. The court reporter continued recording every word with mechanical precision. Outside, faint rain tapped softly against the courthouse windows. Inside, another storm was gathering. Daniel stepped down from the witness stand and returned to counsel table. He glanced toward Monica once more. She was organizing documents inside her portfolio with remarkable care. Not stacks of paper. Just a thin collection of neatly arranged files. One page. Another page. Then a sealed envelope remained untouched beneath them. Daniel barely noticed it. He leaned toward his attorney. "I think this is going exactly the way we expected." His attorney gave a confident nod. "So do I." Across the room, Monica quietly closed her portfolio. She folded her hands together and looked toward the witness stand as though replaying every answer she had just heard. Not with frustration. With precision. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Defense counsel," he said calmly, "you may proceed when you're ready." Monica's attorney stood. Before speaking, he exchanged a brief glance with Monica. She gave the smallest nod. No smile. No celebration. Only quiet certainty. Daniel watched the exchange with complete confidence. He believed the hardest part of the hearing had already passed. He had no idea that every statement he had just delivered under oath was becoming the foundation of a story whose ending was no longer his to control. The courtroom settled into an uneasy silence after Officer Daniel Brooks returned to his seat. His testimony had sounded polished, confident, and complete. To most of the people watching, the case already seemed to be moving toward an obvious conclusion. The jurors exchanged quiet glances. Several of them continued writing notes. Everything they had heard fit together with remarkable consistency. That was exactly what Daniel intended. A carefully repeated story often sounds more convincing than a complicated truth. Across the room, Monica Hayes remained composed. She opened her leather portfolio once more, removing only a single sheet of paper before placing it neatly beside a closed folder. No dramatic gestures. No whispered strategy. No emotional reaction. Only patience. Her attorney leaned toward her. "You know he's building credibility with every answer." Monica answered without looking away from the witness stand. "No. He's building a record." The attorney paused. "What do you mean?" She quietly organized another page. "Every statement matters. Nothing more. Nothing less. Imagine sitting inside a courtroom while someone confidently describes events you know never happened. Imagine realizing that interrupting too soon could stop the truth from revealing itself. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is evidence waiting for the right moment. The prosecutor stood once again. "Your Honor, the state requests permission for one additional line of questioning." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Daniel returned to the witness stand with the same relaxed confidence he had displayed throughout the hearing. The prosecutor smiled. "Officer Brooks, are you certain every statement you've provided today is accurate?" Without hesitation, Daniel answered. "Yes." "You understand you're testifying under oath?" "I do." "And you have no reason to change or correct any portion of your testimony?" "No." The prosecutor nodded with satisfaction. No further questions. Daniel stepped down once again. He believed each confirmation strengthened his position. Across the gallery, a middle-aged man quietly closed his notebook after writing only 3 short lines. Beside him sat a woman wearing a dark business suit. Neither had spoken since arriving that morning. Neither appeared connected to the prosecution or defense. They simply observed. Every answer. Every pause. Every oath. Daniel never looked in their direction. He had become focused on Monica instead. She still hadn't challenged him. She still hadn't shown frustration. If anything, she appeared unusually calm. That unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. The judge reviewed several documents before addressing the defense. "Counsel, your witness." Monica's attorney stood. Instead of walking directly toward the witness stand, he paused beside the defense table. He looked briefly at Monica. She gave another quiet nod. Nothing about the exchange appeared remarkable. Yet somehow it drew Daniel's attention. There was confidence there. Not confidence born from hope. Confidence born from preparation. The attorney approached the witness stand. "Officer Brooks," he began politely, "I'd like to revisit only a few details." Daniel smiled faintly. "Of course. You testified that Ms. Hayes interfered with your investigation." "Correct." "And that statement remains completely accurate?" "It does." "You also testified she delayed your work." "Yes." "And that she refused lawful instructions." "Absolutely." The attorney thanked him after each answer. No challenge. No argument. No attempt to expose contradictions. Only confirmations. Daniel relaxed even further. He glanced toward the jury. Several members nodded while listening. Exactly what he wanted. Across the courtroom, Monica quietly folded her hands together. Her eyes moved from Daniel to the judge, then briefly toward the 2 silent observers seated in the back row. One of them checked the time. The other carefully closed another notebook. Neither expression changed. Neither needed to. Because while Daniel believed he was strengthening his testimony with every repeated answer, someone else was quietly measuring each word against a record that had begun long before this trial ever reached the courtroom. Rain continued tapping softly against the courthouse windows, its steady rhythm almost disappearing beneath the quiet sounds of pages turning and pens moving across legal paths. The hearing had settled into an almost predictable routine. At least that was how it appeared. Officer Daniel Brooks leaned comfortably in his chair beside the prosecution table. Every answer he had given under oath remained unchallenged. Every confident statement seemed to strengthen the version of events he wanted the court to believe. He glanced toward Monica Hayes. She was reading. Not a thick binder. Not dozens of reports. Just a slim folder containing a handful of neatly arranged documents. She turned one page. Made a brief handwritten note. Closed the folder. Then folded her hands together once again. Daniel almost smiled. He interpreted her composure as someone running out of options. He had no way of knowing that she had spent months learning the value of speaking only when every piece of the puzzle was already in place. The judge adjusted several files stacked neatly before him. "Defense," he said calmly, "you may continue." Monica's attorney approached the witness stand once more. His pace remained slow. Measured. Unhurried. "Officer Brooks," he began, "I'd like to clarify just a few points." Daniel nodded confidently. "Of course. You've testified today that Ms. Hayes repeatedly interfered with your investigation." "That's correct. And you've stated those events occurred exactly as described in your written report." "Yes. There are no omissions." "No. No exaggerations." "No. No corrections you wish to make?" Daniel answered immediately. "None." The attorney thanked him politely after every response. No confrontation. No raised voice. No attempt to trap the witness. Only confirmation. Imagine believing every question proves you're winning. Imagine never realizing someone is carefully asking you to lock each answer into the official record. Sometimes the strongest evidence is not discovered. It is repeated voluntarily. Monica quietly watched the exchange without interruption. Her expression remained impossible to read. Several jurors glanced toward her, perhaps expecting frustration. Instead, they found patience. A patience that almost seemed rehearsed. Across the gallery, the two silent observers remained seated in the final row. One reviewed a small notebook. The other examined a document inside a plain manila folder before placing it back inside without showing anyone nearby. Neither reacted to Daniel's testimony. Neither whispered. They simply observed. The prosecutor looked increasingly satisfied. He leaned toward Daniel. "I think we've established everything we needed." Daniel nodded. "So do I." The defense attorney returned to counsel table. Before sitting, he quietly asked Monica, "Is there anything you'd like to add?" She answered with only 3 words. "Not quite yet." He looked at her for a moment. Then simply nodded. Whatever uncertainty he may have felt disappeared. The judge noticed the brief exchange. "So, Ms. Hayes," he asked, "will your defense be presenting additional evidence?" Monica stood slowly. Every eye in the courtroom followed her. She held the slim folder against her side. "Yes, Your Honor." "When?" She looked briefly toward Daniel. Then back to the bench. "After the record is complete." Daniel frowned slightly. The answer sounded unusual. Yet he dismissed the feeling almost immediately. His attention returned to the jury. He believed their expressions reflected confidence in his testimony. What he failed to notice was something far more important. The court clerk quietly received a sealed envelope from a courthouse security officer. No announcement followed. No explanation was offered. The envelope was placed discreetly beside the judge's files. The judge glanced at it only once before continuing the proceedings as though nothing had changed. Most people in the courtroom never noticed. Monica noticed. So did the two silent observers. Daniel never looked toward the bench. He remained focused on defending yesterday's decisions. Completely unaware that somewhere inside that sealed envelope rested information capable of changing not only the direction of the hearing, but also the role he believed he played within it. The sealed envelope rested quietly beside the judge's files, almost invisible beneath the growing stack of legal documents. No announcement had accompanied its arrival. No one in the gallery seemed interested in it. No one except Monica Hayes. She noticed it the instant it touched the bench. Then she calmly looked away. Officer Daniel Brooks never did. His attention remained fixed on the defense table, where Monica sat with her slim folder resting neatly before her. She hadn't raised her voice once since the hearing began. She hadn't challenged a single statement. She hadn't objected. 2. Daniel, her silence still looked like surrender. His attorney leaned closer. "I don't think they'll have much left." Daniel smiled. "I told you. The jury believes you." He nodded slightly. "So does the judge." Confidence has a quiet way of narrowing vision. The more certain people become, the less likely they are to notice what is changing around them. Imagine believing you've already won because nobody is arguing with you. Imagine never asking why the other side seems so comfortable losing. Sometimes confidence is not proof of strength. Sometimes it is proof that you haven't seen the entire picture yet. The judge looked toward the defense. "Counsel," he said, "you may continue." Monica's attorney rose once again. This time he carried no documents. Only a legal pad. He stopped beside the witness stand. "Officer Brooks." "Yes. I'd like to ask about your written report." Daniel answered immediately. "Certainly. You prepared it personally?" "I did." "No one altered it afterward?" "No." "You reviewed it before submitting it?" "Yes." "And everything contained in that report remains accurate today?" Daniel looked directly toward the jury. "It does." The attorney thanked him. "Nothing more." Another simple confirmation. Across the room, one juror quietly underlined something in her notebook. Another stopped writing altogether and simply watched Monica. There was something unusual about her composure. Most defendants shifted in their seats. Most whispered constantly with their attorneys. Monica did neither. She simply listened. Patiently. Methodically. The court reporter continued recording every exchange without pause. Keys clicked. Pages advanced. Outside, the rain had stopped. Thin rays of sunlight now stretched across the courtroom floor. Near the rear entrance, the two silent observers remained seated. One briefly adjusted his tie. The other quietly placed a small identification wallet back inside his jacket before anyone nearby noticed it. Daniel never looked in their direction. His confidence had become routine. The attorney asked another question. "Officer Brooks, did Ms. Hayes ever identify herself in any official capacity during your interaction?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "No." "And you are absolutely certain about that?" "I am." "No possibility that you overlooked anything?" Daniel almost laughed. "No." The attorney nodded politely. No further questions. Daniel stepped away from the witness stand feeling stronger than ever. He believed every answer had reinforced his credibility. As he returned to his seat, Monica finally opened the slim folder resting before her. She removed one single document. Folded behind it remained the same sealed envelope she had never touched throughout the hearing. She slid both papers toward her attorney without saying a word. The attorney looked at them briefly. His expression didn't change. He simply placed them neatly on counsel table. The judge noticed. "So, Ms. Hayes," he asked calmly, "are you prepared to address the court?" Monica stood. The room fell silent. She picked up only the single document, leaving the sealed envelope exactly where it was. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm enough to make every person lean forward. "Yes, Your Honor." She paused. "But before I do, I respectfully request that the court first review the materials delivered to the bench moments ago." For the first time that day, Daniel Brooks stopped smiling. The courtroom grew so quiet that even the rustle of paper seemed unusually loud. Judge Eleanor Whitmore reached for the sealed envelope resting beside her case file. She examined the official seal for a brief moment before carefully opening it. No one interrupted. Every pair of eyes followed the movement of her hands. Officer Daniel Brooks remained seated beside the prosecution table, convinced the envelope contained nothing capable of changing the direction of the hearing. His confidence had survived every question, every oath, every confirmation. He expected it to survive this as well. Across the courtroom, Monica Hayes waited without speaking. She neither looked toward the judge nor toward Daniel. Instead, she calmly rested one hand on the closed folder before her. Patience had carried her this far. It would carry her a little farther. Imagine believing that every important piece of evidence has already been presented. Imagine discovering that the most significant document has not even been read yet. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives inside an ordinary envelope. Judge Whitmore quietly reviewed the first page. Then another. Her expression remained disciplined, but something subtle changed. She slowed. She reread one paragraph. Then another. The prosecutor noticed. So did Daniel. For the first time that morning, uncertainty entered the room. The judge looked toward the court clerk. "Please mark these materials as received." "Yes, Your Honor." The clerk accepted the documents without comment. No explanation followed. The gallery remained perfectly still. Monica's attorney rose. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, the defense requests that the newly submitted materials be considered before additional testimony." The prosecutor stood immediately. "No objection." Daniel turned toward him. "No objection." He hadn't expected that. The judge nodded. "The request is granted." She carefully placed the documents beside her notes before looking toward Monica. "Ms. Hayes." Monica stood. Her movements were calm, measured, professional. She carried only the single document she had removed from her folder earlier. Nothing else. No stack of evidence. No dramatic presentation. Just one page. She approached the witness area slowly. Daniel watched every step. Something about her confidence felt different now. Not emotional. Not defiant. Certain. The judge spoke gently. "You may proceed." Monica placed the document on the lectern. "Thank you, Your Honor." Her voice remained steady. "I would first like to clarify that I have no personal interest in embarrassing Officer Brooks." Daniel looked surprised. "I have no interest in winning through humiliation." She paused briefly. "My only interest is ensuring the accuracy of the official record." Several jurors looked up from their notes. The court reporter continued typing without pause. Keys clicked steadily through the silence. Monica turned slightly toward Daniel. "Our legal system depends on truthful testimony." Daniel met her eyes. "It does. I'm glad we agree." There was no sarcasm. Only quiet. Professionalism. She continued. "Officer Brooks confirmed under oath that every statement in both his written report and today's testimony was complete, accurate, and unchanged." Daniel answered confidently. "That's correct. You also confirmed there were no omissions." "There weren't. No corrections. No. No additional facts the court should know. No. Monica nodded once. Thank you. She returned her attention to the judge. Your Honor, I appreciate the officer's clarity. Again, there was no accusation. No raised voice. Only precision. The courtroom seemed to lean forward together. Even the spectators sensed the conversation had crossed an invisible line. Daniel still believed he remained in control. What he failed to understand was that every answer he had repeated moments earlier had quietly removed every possible path back. Monica reached into her folder one final time. Her fingers rested on a small leather credential wallet. She did not open it. Not yet. Instead, she looked calmly toward the bench and said, "Before I explain why these records matter, there is one fact about my role in this case that the court deserves to know." For the first time all morning, Daniel Brooks felt his confidence begin to slip. No one in the courtroom spoke. The silence that followed Monica Hayes's final sentence felt heavier than every hour of testimony that had come before it. Even the court reporter slowed for a brief moment before continuing to record every word. Judge Eleanor Whitmore looked toward Monica. "You may proceed." Monica gave a respectful nod. "Thank you, Your Honor." She lifted the small leather credential wallet from her folder. Not dramatically. Not triumphantly. Simply as someone presenting another official document to the court. She placed it carefully on the lectern. "I believe the court should understand the capacity in which I was present during the events Officer Brooks described." Daniel Brooks leaned forward slightly. For the first time that morning, uncertainty replaced confidence. The prosecutor glanced toward the credential without recognizing it. The jurors watched quietly. Imagine believing you've spent hours describing another person's actions, only to discover you never truly understood who that person was. Sometimes the greatest surprise is not hidden in the evidence. Sometimes it is hidden in the identity of the person listening. Judge Whitmore accepted the credential wallet from the bailiff. She opened it. Her eyes moved across the identification. She examined it carefully before looking back toward Monica. "You are employed by the United States government?" "Yes, Your Honor." "In what capacity?" Monica answered calmly. "I am a federal investigator assigned to a public integrity task force." The words landed softly. Yet they transformed the atmosphere inside the courtroom. Several spectators exchanged confused looks. One juror slowly lowered his pen. Daniel stared at Monica without speaking. The judge continued. "Were you acting within the scope of your official responsibilities during the incident discussed today?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And were those responsibilities known to Officer Brooks at that time?" "They were not." Daniel's attorney shifted uneasily in his chair. The prosecutor remained silent. Neither interrupted. Monica continued only after the judge nodded. "My assignment did not require me to disclose my role during the initial encounter." She paused. "It required me to document what occurred." Nothing in her voice suggested satisfaction. Only professionalism. Daniel finally spoke. "Your Honor." The judge looked toward him. "You'll have an opportunity to respond, Officer Brooks." He nodded quietly. For the first time since taking the witness stand, he no longer appeared certain of where the hearing was headed. Monica placed a single document beside her credential. This report summarizes the official observations made following the incident. She did not hand it directly to the judge. Instead, she passed it to her attorney, who submitted it through the proper procedure. Every step followed courtroom protocol. Every movement reflected preparation. Judge Whitmore reviewed the first page. She turned another. Then another. Her expression remained composed. The court acknowledges receipt. Monica folded her hands once again. "I would also like the record to reflect one additional fact." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Officer Brooks confirmed multiple times today that his testimony, written report, and recollection are complete, accurate, and unchanged. That is reflected in the record, the judge replied. Monica inclined her head. Thank you, Your Honor. She looked briefly toward Daniel. There was no anger in her eyes. No triumph. Only quiet disappointment. I appreciate his clarity. Daniel lowered his gaze. Only now did he begin to understand why every question had sounded so simple. Every confirmation he had repeated under oath had removed the possibility of misunderstanding. His own testimony now stood exactly as he had chosen to give it. Outside, sunlight finally broke through the clouds, filling the courtroom with warm afternoon light. Inside, however, the hearing had entered an entirely different chapter. The courtroom no longer centered on what Monica Hayes had done. It centered on whether every statement Officer Daniel Brooks had sworn to tell was supported by the evidence now resting before the court. And as Judge Whitmore carefully organized the newly admitted documents, one truth became impossible to ignore. The person Daniel believed he had been describing was no ordinary citizen. She had been quietly observing him all along. No one could remember the last time a courtroom had become so silent without a verdict being announced. Judge Eleanor Whitmore carefully closed the federal credential wallet and returned it to the bench. She then looked toward Monica Hayes with a level of attention that had noticeably changed. Not because Monica had raised her voice. Not because she had challenged anyone. Because every statement she had made had been supported by procedure. Officer Daniel Brooks remained seated, but the certainty that had carried him through the morning was beginning to disappear. He glanced toward his attorney. Neither of them spoke. There seemed to be nothing left to say. Imagine spending hours trying to convince a courtroom that someone else lacked credibility, only to realize your own words have become the evidence everyone is now examining. Truth has a remarkable habit. It never needs to hurry. Judge Whitmore addressed Monica. Ms. Hayes, for the record, are you requesting that the court reach any conclusion regarding Officer Brooks today? Monica answered immediately. No, Your Honor. The response surprised nearly everyone. I am only requesting that the official record accurately reflect the facts presented under oath. The judge nodded slowly. And the federal materials submitted to the court? They were provided through the appropriate legal process. No further comment. No, Your Honor. Again, nothing dramatic. Only restraint. Daniel watched her carefully. He had expected accusation. He had prepared for confrontation. Instead, he found professionalism. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the state requests a brief recess to review the newly admitted materials. So ordered. The judge struck the gavel lightly. Court will recess for 20 minutes. The room slowly came alive. Jurors exited through a side door. Attorneys gathered their files. Reporters quietly compared notes without raising their voices. Yet no one left the courtroom immediately. Everyone sensed the hearing had fundamentally changed. Daniel remained seated. His attorney leaned closer. We need to review everything. Daniel nodded absent-mindedly. I know. Across the room, Monica quietly returned the credential wallet to her briefcase. One of the two silent observers approached her for the first time all day. He spoke softly enough that no one else could hear. She listened. Then simply nodded. The conversation lasted less than 15 seconds. When it ended, both individuals walked in separate directions. Nothing about the exchange attracted attention. Except to Daniel. He watched them carefully. Questions filled his mind. Who were they? Why had they remained silent all morning? Why had Monica never appeared surprised by anything happening inside the courtroom? For the first time, Daniel realized he had spent the entire hearing assuming he understood everyone else's role. That assumption now felt painfully uncertain. The courtroom doors opened briefly as the bailiff returned with additional files requested by the judge. Several folders were placed neatly beside the bench. Judge Whitmore remained inside reviewing documents instead of leaving during recess. That alone told experienced attorneys something important. The materials required immediate attention. Daniel slowly looked toward Monica. She happened to meet his eyes. There was no satisfaction in her expression. No anger. No victory. Only the calm composure she had carried since the hearing began. She gave a small, respectful nod. Nothing more. Daniel found himself nodding back almost instinctively. It was the first honest exchange between them. Not as opponents. Simply as two people sharing the same room while waiting for the truth to finish revealing itself. Outside, the rain had completely stopped. Sunlight streamed through the courthouse windows, casting bright patterns across the polished wooden floor. Inside, however, another realization was beginning to settle. This hearing was no longer about proving Monica Hayes wrong. It had become about determining whether every statement Officer Daniel Brooks had sworn to tell could withstand the careful scrutiny that follows whenever truth and official responsibility meet inside the same courtroom. And when the recess finally ended, the next witness would not change the direction of the case. The record already had. When the courtroom reconvened, the atmosphere had changed in a way no one could fully explain. The same wooden benches remained occupied. The same judge presided from the bench. The same attorneys returned to their tables. Yet nothing felt the same. Officer Daniel Brooks sat a little straighter than before, but confidence no longer came naturally. Every answer he had given under oath now echoed in his own mind, each one carrying a weight he had not felt when he first spoke it. Judge Eleanor Whitmore entered the courtroom. "Please be seated." The room obeyed immediately. She looked over the newly admitted materials one final time before addressing counsel. "The court has reviewed the documents submitted during the recess." No one interrupted. "The court will not reach factual conclusions regarding matters outside the scope of today's hearing. However, the materials are relevant to evaluating the testimony presented before this court." Daniel lowered his eyes. Those words alone changed the direction of the proceeding. Imagine believing the most difficult moment is being questioned. Then realizing the hardest moment is quietly listening while your own words are examined one by one. Truth rarely arrives with raised voices. It usually arrives through careful comparison. Monica Hayes remained standing beside her attorney. Her expression had not changed since the hearing began. She was neither relieved nor triumphant. Professionalism required neither. Judge Whitmore continued. "Ms. Hayes, you indicated earlier that your purpose today is to ensure the record accurately reflects the facts." "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you intend to offer any further testimony?" "Only one clarification." "You may proceed." Monica stepped toward the lectern. "I never expected Officer Brooks to know my professional assignment during our initial encounter." Daniel looked up. She continued calmly. "My position is not the issue before this court." She paused. "The accuracy of sworn testimony is." The courtroom remained silent. No one shifted in their seat. No one whispered. The prosecutor slowly closed his notebook. Monica continued. "Every public servant carries responsibility." She glanced briefly toward Daniel. "Myself included." There was no accusation in her voice. Only conviction. If we expect citizens to trust institutions, then every official statement must be worthy of that trust. Judge Whitmore nodded thoughtfully. The words settled across the courtroom with remarkable simplicity. Daniel realized something he had failed to understand all morning. Monica had never tried to defeat him. She had allowed him every opportunity to correct the record himself. Every confirmation had been voluntary. Every answer had been his own. His attorney leaned closer. "If you wish to clarify any portion of your testimony, now would be the appropriate time." Daniel remained silent for several seconds. He looked toward the witness stand where he had spoken so confidently only hours earlier. Then he slowly stood. "Your Honor." Judge Whitmore looked up. "Yes, Officer Brooks." Daniel took a slow breath. "I would like the opportunity to review portions of my testimony and clarify any statements that are not fully supported by the evidence before the court." No one reacted immediately. The request was calm, measured, honest. Judge Whitmore regarded him for a moment before responding. "The request is noted." Monica looked toward Daniel. For the first time that day, their eyes met without conflict. Not as opponents. Not as strangers. Simply as two public servants standing on opposite sides of the same principle. The principle that truth deserves patience. And that accountability begins the moment someone chooses honesty over pride. Outside, the clouds had finally broken apart. Sunlight streamed through the courthouse windows, casting long beams across the polished floor. Inside, the hearing had become something larger than a dispute between two individuals. It had become a reminder that justice is strongest not when someone wins an argument, but when everyone entrusted with the truth is willing to protect it. Several months later, the courtroom had returned to its ordinary rhythm. New cases filled the calendar. Different witnesses stepped into the same witness stand. New juries listened to new testimony. To most people, the hearing involving Officer Daniel Brooks and Monica Hayes had already become another closed file. But for the people who had lived through it, the lesson had never truly ended. Daniel returned to duty after completing every review and requirement expected of him. His badge looked exactly the same as it always had. His uniform had not changed. His patrol car carried the same department insignia. Only one thing was different. The man wearing the badge understood its weight in a way he never had before. Imagine discovering that the greatest change in your career is invisible to everyone except yourself. Imagine realizing that accountability is not the end of a reputation. Sometimes it is the beginning of character. One cool autumn morning, Daniel responded to a routine call involving a disagreement between two neighbors. No emergency. No immediate danger. Only confusion. Months earlier, he might have arrived convinced he already knew who was responsible. Instead, he greeted both individuals with the same calm respect. He listened without interruption. He asked questions before reaching conclusions. He reviewed the available facts before forming an opinion. The conversation lasted less than 20 minutes. Both neighbors left satisfied that they had been heard fairly. As Daniel returned to his patrol car, he paused for a moment. Not because the situation had been difficult. Because it reminded him how different one decision could become when assumptions were replaced with patience. Across town, Monica Hayes continued serving in her federal assignment with the same quiet professionalism she had demonstrated throughout the hearing. She never spoke publicly about the courtroom. She never gave interviews. She never described Daniel as an enemy. When younger investigators asked why she had remained so calm under oath, her answer was always the same. The truth does not become stronger because we speak louder. Those words quietly circulated throughout the office. Not as a slogan. As a standard. Months later, Judge Eleanor Whitmore addressed a gathering of newly admitted attorneys during a judicial education program. She never mentioned names. She never discussed confidential matters. Instead, she offered one simple observation. The integrity of our legal system depends not only upon discovering facts, but upon the willingness of every participant to tell them honestly. The audience remained silent. Some wrote the sentence into their notebooks. Others simply reflected on it. Daniel would later hear those words repeated during a departmental ethics seminar. He recognized them immediately. Not because they were dramatic. Because they were true. One afternoon, while leaving the courthouse after an unrelated hearing, Daniel noticed Monica walking down the front steps carrying the same slim leather portfolio she had brought months before. He hesitated. then walked toward her. "Ms. Hayes." She turned and smiled politely. "Officer Brooks. I wanted to thank you." She looked at him with quiet curiosity. "For reminding me that the oath matters every time, not only when someone is watching." Monica nodded gently. "The oath protects everyone." She extended her hand. Daniel shook it. There was no resentment. No celebration. Only mutual respect for the responsibility they both carried. They walked in different directions beneath the afternoon sunlight, each returning to the work they had chosen long before meeting one another. The courthouse remained behind them. Its stone walls had witnessed countless arguments over the years. Yet the most enduring lesson from that courtroom required no dramatic verdict. A uniform may command attention. A title may command authority. But only honesty earns lasting trust. And when truth is finally allowed to speak, it does not ask who holds the greater power. It simply asks who had the courage to tell it.